Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Students of the Word. This is session number 106 of Students of the Word. And tonight, we are back to paragraph 18 and to a sentence I've been looking forward to since we began the study. There are two things in First John that have always been very difficult to understand. Um, uh, Sorry, I almost did a Psalms thing. There are two things in John that are hard to understand. Yea, three that are beyond comprehension. Um, but we've been going through them. So the first one is the whole like anybody who commits sin never knew Jesus section back in paragraph 9, and that was one we tackled that now quite some time ago. The other is, frankly, the one that I added at the end was what we were talking about last night. Those passages which have been a stumbling block for many. Like, why is it that John seems to promise that we'll be given anything we ask for? When, of course, it's easy. It's not merely that that's a thing that has not happened in our experiences. But of course, like one can look at, in the Gospels themselves, Jesus himself asked for something which didn't happen, right? That the cup could be passed from him. He submitted himself to God's will, but he did ask, right, that it be passed, and God said no. And again, this was I mentioned last time. Yeah, C.S. Lewis really struggled with this, trying to understand prayer and how prayer works, and trying to reconcile those two forms of prayer, which seem to be both advocated in Scripture. The one that says, "Not my will, but yours be done," right? That asks for things, and but yet submits to God's will, and doesn't insist that the thing be given. And the other form of prayer, which is asking boldly for whatever you want, believing confidently that you're going to receive it, whatever it is. And there are other passages apart from the passages in First John, the one right before the commandments verse, and then the one that we were looking at last time. And I'm still really excited about our last discovery that I don't think that that's what he's even talking about there. I don't think he's saying anything at all. I think that seems to me in context, as the more we began to think through his syntax, just how he's saying the thing and the context in which he's saying it, the less confident I am at all that he meant anything we ask for, but rather he seems to have a thing on his mind, namely life and the life of the age, specifically the thing that, and this I thought was such a wonderful insight from Stephen last time, that seems to be the context. So just looking up ahead at paragraph 18 there, these things I have written to you who believe in the name of the Son of God, so that you may know that you have eternal life, so that you may have seen, you can experience the fact that you have the life of the age, present tense. That's like the thesis of this whole paragraph. And so when he talks about the requests, the asks that we ask of him, and our confidence, are knowing that we have the asks that we asked of him, the ask that we ask of him. I think that it's clear in context. That's what he's talking about. Do we have life? Are we going to be given life? And when we realize that, as we were realizing it last week, all of a sudden I found, and I was sort of realizing this when I was reflecting on that and thinking ahead towards the mortal sin verse. And that is, it begins to answer one of the mysterious questions. So there are two questions that I have always had about this next verse about the sin leading to death. And one question is, what does he mean by that? But the second question was, why is he talking about that? Like, why does he bring it? Seems so out of nowhere. But I think what our realizations last time may perhaps help us understand it's not, in fact, out of nowhere. He's talking about death because he was just talking about life. So actually, perfectly relevant to the conversation that he's been having, I think. So just again, I keep calling this the mortal sin verse, but let me not assume everybody knows what I'm talking about. Of course, if you are Catholic, you will certainly know that there are two categories of sins that Catholics have for centuries. Categorized sins into mortal sins and venial sins. That is, sins leading unto death and sins that are not leading unto death. They're still sins, they're still bad, but it's sort of that concept, creating this kind of hierarchy of sins. The sins that are really, really, really bad, and the sins that are bad, but less bad, right? And so okay, yeah, that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. These verses are where this concept comes from. Like these verses are the almost entire, not quite. Again, there are other places that, like in context, they kind of the church over the years had found that doctrine to work well or to explain. But primarily, this is the categorization, and this is certainly why they're called that. So let's read it in English, verse 16. 5:16. If anyone sees his brother committing a sin not leading to death, he shall ask, and God will for him give life to those who commit sin not leading to death. There is a sin leading to death. I do not say he should make request for this. And so again, those two sentences they're not the entire justification for, but they have given birth to a whole area of Catholic theology and certainly Catholic penitential practice and confessional practice over the centuries. So we're going to talk about this today, but one thing that I want to be perfectly clear on before we begin, I'm going to boldly predict that I'm pretty sure. I mean, I'm still myself not 100% sure. I'm gonna see what we learn together here today, but I'm pretty sure that my conclusion is not going to be that I'm just agreeing with Catholic tradition on the interpretation of this verse. And the reason I say that is not because it's not to, I mean, this is not meant to be a critique of Catholicism, still less of Catholics. But I think that the interpretation of these verses, of these sentences, rather, this verse, that led to that doctrine is one which has been very, very common for a long time, but with which I disagree very significantly. And essentially, it's just reading verses out of context. If the question you're trying to answer if you're trying to answer a question in systematic theology, and you are looking at individual verses for answers to the questions you have about systematic theology, that is often going to lead to taking verses totally out of context, because nobody in the New Testament, no one anywhere in the Bible is writing systematic theology. That's nowhere in the Bible do any of the biblical authors sit down to write systematic theology. Even Paul, in a book like Romans, is not writing systematic theology. He's making a particular argument. And of course, he addresses many theological issues in the letter, but he's not when I talk about systematic theology, I'm talking about conceptually the greatest example of systematic theology is Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica, which means like the summer, the greatness of all theology, right? The great compendium of all theology. If you're going to sit down and write something like the Summa Theologica, where you're going to go through and be like, okay, here are all the headings, like all of the questions that we have about God and man and how the universe works and salvation and all these things, right? And we're just going to go and we're going to organize them. And it's amazing. The Summa Theologica is a wonderful, wonderful work. I love the Summa Theologica. But nobody in the Bible is writing that. That's just not what they're doing. And so if that's what you're trying to do, and I don't blame people in the church for wanting to do it, right? It's important to think through these things this way. And it's important to anchor that in scripture. But it's extremely easy when you're doing that project to begin seeing, if you see a verse as an answer to a question that you're bringing to it like that, it's super likely that you are going to take it out of the context. You're going to be removing, in order to have it answer the question you want it to answer, you're going to take it out of the context that the author put it in, because the author wasn't trying to answer your question. Yeah. Jackie says, LOL, James 2. Yes. Yeah. The faith and work stuff in James 2 you're thinking of, Jackie? Yes. Yes. That's a good example. That's a good example. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. James is talking, there's stuff that James is talking about. James would be a fun one to read together someday, but James is a good example. Yeah, I mean, he's got stuff he's talking about, right? He's not just dealing with theological abstractions. Anyway, so I think that I do not believe that what John is doing here, or rather, let me say, because I'm not going to draw conclusions yet because we haven't done our analysis, but heading into it, I am deeply skeptical that we are going to conclude that John is going to be creating two categories of sin in precisely this sort of way. And instead, we need to put it back into the context that we've just been discussing. That you may know that you have the life of the age, the age-ish life. Now, let's look. Now, of course, I can tell you the other thing that I'm really you're not going to be surprised when I tell you the thing I'm most looking forward to. And what I'm most looking forward to in looking at the Greek of this verse is the preposition, right? What is the preposition that connects in Greek, that connects sin and death? Right? No spoilers. Can you guess? I'm not sure. My guess is ice. EIS, the into one. That's my guess, but I might be wrong. We'll see. Because my guess is ice, because it would be interesting. Because remember, he's been using ice, the into preposition, when he's talking about like believing in the Son of God, right? And so I'm wondering if there's a parallel there. So that's my guess. Let's see. And then we should get it twice in the first sentence. Actually, it's all over the place. This leading to. Let's see. Okay, here we go. There it is. If one, and again, I'm going to resist the any here, as I so often do. If one, so tis, this is what is this? Interrogative pronoun? Is that like if who? It's an indefinite pronoun. Okay, so like one would be a fine translation, so, because one is an indefinite pronoun in English. Okay, if one ide should see. Okay, pause for a second. Already, notice what we see here? He's playing off of the oidamen before. We talked a lot last time about the oidamen as a form of to see, right? using to have seen something in the perfect tense to mean that you know, right? And now he's using it, well, not in the present, but in the subjunctive because it's an if clause. But here he seems to be talking about seeing, like actually seeing, actually perceiving. If one should see Tonadelphon Autu, the brother of him, if one should see his brother Hamartanonta sinning. Okay, if one should see the brother of him sinning. All right, hang on a second. Um, I'm trying to. I want to make sure I understand. Okay, I can't bear the suspense. The pros. Oh my goodness, hamartian me pros thanaton. Oh my goodness, it's not ice. It's pros. Pros indeed. Okay, hang on a second. Yes, we did just get pros with the confidence we have towards him. That's like in his direction, right? Because pros is a direction preposition, right? Like coming at you. Pros. Oh, that's fascinating. So a hamartia pros thanaton. Now, is this one? Hang on, make sure I don't make the classic blunder, which I make so often. Are there different? Does it have different senses when it's used with different cases, or does it always take the same case? The strong doesn't tell me so clearly as I would. Oh, here it is. Yes, yes, yes. Look at this. Okay, there it is. So usually wait, when it says the accusative case, usually, does that mean it's usually in the accusative case, or that when it is in the accusative case, it usually means this? It's got to be the latter. That's not the common usage. Okay, okay. So forward to or toward, generally, the genitive case. So when it's used with a genitive, it's the side of or pertaining to. Okay. When it's the dative case, it means by the side of or next. So like next to, nearby. And right. So dative is usually no motion. It's just like it's so if you see somebody and somebody else is standing next to him, um, so like if you were to ask in Greek somebody and be like, "Hey, who's that guy standing next to Bill?" Right? It would be like the guy pros Bill, right? In the dative. Um, okay, sure. No motion. Accusative case, the place, time, occasion, or respect, which is the destination. Okay, so accusative means like your goal, your destination, right? So let's watch how this is being used. So don't return to Herod. And that's that's going to be accusative, right? So the accusative one is the main motion one. So it is maybe actually usually in the other sense. Okay. Because again, I'm really bad at cases. At recognizing cases. Uh oh, I see, I see. Okay. Randall says, I would distinguish pros indicating direction from ice indicating goal. Okay, sure. So in the accusative, it tends to mean like towards, like that way. It's the direction, it's more of a general pointer. Okay. So if you wanted to say, well, so here, don't return to Herod. Herod would be in the accusative here. And so that would be because they're actually going to go to Herod. This is the wise men, of course. Um, then Jerusalem goes out to him. Yeah. Oh, the axe is laid to the root of the tree. Okay, okay, hang on. So when John the Baptist says the axe is laid to the root of the tree, I bet, hang on, dative, right? So use the dative there. Um, he's like the axe, it's next to it, like because it doesn't mean the axe is hurtling towards the tree. It means like the axe is there, like he's about to wind up and swing. No, that's the accusative. Okay, okay. So he is describing like the axe is like on it's like the blow is in motion, right? The axe is hurtling towards the root of the tree, is what John the Baptist is saying. See, when you understand the preposition pros, you'd understand. I mean, of course, John the Baptist. Well, I don't say of course, but why should I be surprised that John the Baptist is in fact saying the like bolder and more alarming version, right? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. All right. So they went out unto John, comest thou to me? So most of these are accusative, right? Jesus said to him, sure. Interesting. So it's obviously not used with said all the time because this is the first time we're getting it. Um, but like Jesus said towards him. And this is to John the Baptist. Like, just do it. Right? When John the Baptist has said, I shouldn't be baptizing you. Okay. Right. You strike your foot, cross a stone. It's like the axe in the root there. Movement. Okay, now this is interesting. He who looketh on a woman to lust after her. So what's the huh? See, that's really interesting. Because of the way it's done in English, I would have thought that was an infinitive. Like to lust was just the verb. But no. Okay, so prost to all right, hang on, I'm curious now. I, I okay. Uh everyone looking upon a woman prosto. What is this? This is an aorist. Oh, it is an infinitive. I see. In order to lust. Okay. So it's an infinitive in Greek, in the aorist, which I don't get, but I don't need to get that right now. I'm not going to get distracted. Uh, to to desire, to lust after her. So pros in order to here. And and it's kind of a bad data point on account of it's the infinitive, which doesn't exactly have a case, does it? Because that's not declined, is it? I wouldn't think so. Okay. All right. Never mind. Bad data point. Interesting data point, but bad data point. Um, yeah, no. After isn't the preposition, Stephen. Like after is a pair. It's just there. It's just the verb desire, right? They didn't want to just use the verb desire. Um, because they wanted to specify. Anyway, let me head up to I've got the bit in my teeth now. Got to understand this preposition. That's important. And I'm trying to get to the Gospel of John. Will I get there? Um, yes. Great. Okay. Aha. Oh ho. The word was with God. The word was pros God. Right. I remember we saw this before, but I every time I need to make sure I understand it. So in this case, pros theon, pros ton theon, um, that's what case is that? That's accusative. Okay, but it's not, but there's no motion because it's just was. The word was pros God. So why does it use the accusative and not the like the dative would seem to be appropriate here next to God? You think it's a Koine thing? Using the accusative, you mean? Are you suggesting that they're using the accusative when they might better, when like earlier, more polished Greek speakers might have done that, handled that differently? Yeah, you think you suspect classical Greek would be more strict about this? To use the accusative only in the case of motion, you mean? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, Jesus coming to him, he brought him to Jesus. Nathanael coming to him, Jesus said to him the same, came to Jesus, right? Okay. So most of it is movement. Even the even using it in the context of the dialogue tags, right? He said to him, that's still a movement thing because it's like you're sending your words to that person, right? Like the thing that you're saying, it's indicating what is the direction or trajectory of your words, right? Um, yeah. Okay. So that's the clearly the dominant usage. They came to John. I mean, we've barely seen any other examples. Well, here's one. The fields are white already to harvest. And that's probably accusative again, isn't it? Theresmon. I'm guessing because I've been noticing that the accusatives tend to be ending in with a an N, right? Um, okay. See there, and that's like metaphorical movement or movement in time, right? Like the fields are headed to harvest time. Right. Okay. All right. All right. This one is cool. You were willing to rejoice. All right, hang on. I want to look at this one. Okay. He was the burning and shining lamp. You were willing to rejoice pros horon to an hour in his foti, in his light. Horon, season, hour, period of time, right? And that's accusative. So once again, like the harvest, this is direction in time. But that's interesting because it here this doesn't mean like towards harvest makes sense because harvest is like the end point, right? And the growth of the field and the maturation of the grain is headed in that direction, right? Um, and but this is like you could almost translate this, it seems to me, you were willing to rejoice during a season, like for that span of time. And that's not a direction thing. That's not a towards anything. That's a during this, but it's still accusative. I mean, I guess you could say that, like, in the context of what he's talking about, it still is. I mean, it's a season that had an end point, right? It's kind of the analogy of motion in a certain direction, right? Right. Applied to time. Yeah, no, it's just it seems like a different relationship with time than the harvest one. And yeah, time does only go in one direction. And he is in context talking about the terminus of John the Baptist's time. So, like during that time, like unless you translate horan as meaning like you were willing to rejoice up to that point in the light of him, towards that point, like until the end. All right. I'm totally going to stop this rabbit hole in a second. It is our. I knew it. Okay. Yeah. I wouldn't translate that for a season. I would say, and you were willing to rejoice up until that hour, like the hour of his death, in other words. Because I don't think he is talking about a period of time. He's talking about the hour, the faithful hour for John the Baptist. Yeah. You were willing to rejoice until the hour, until his hour. Huh. Maybe. Anyway, um, but I'm going back. Okay. The thing I'm confident in is that by and large, pros, its dominant usage, the fundamental sense of pros is movement in a direction towards a point. Not like I see the distinction you were making before, Randall, between like destination and goal, right? It's not like you're trying to, like until the achievement of some end or the accomplishment of something. But it's like, again, say, like John the Baptist doesn't talk about like the axe is going to go until it cuts down the tree, which is its goal, right? He's just talking about the linear distance between the axe and the root of the tree, right? And the axe is coming. It's headed towards the root of the tree. Um, okay. And of course, we should observe that pros thanaton, thanaton is in the accusative. So a sin towards death. If anyone should see the brothers, but hang on a second. Before I got impatient and jumped ahead to the conjunction, or sorry, to the preposition, because I couldn't wait a moment longer. Let me go back to the question I was asking. And that is, I want to understand the participial construction here. So this is a present participle, sinning. But I don't just want to assume that this works the same way that it would in English, because uh, we know how fond John is of his present participles, and they do seem to work. He does seem to use them in different ways than we would deploy them in English. Like we wouldn't say each of the sinning ones, in English, but John says that all the time. Okay. So if one should see his brother, it's the relationship between these. So in English, if we look at how they translate it, if anyone sees his brother committing a sin, um, the question is, what is the object of the verb to see? And the answer, so is this an adjective? Sees his sinning brother? His sinning a sin not unto death brother? Is that whole thing sinning a sin not unto death? Is that whole thing sort of adjectival to brother? Okay, right. Hamartononta is agreeing with Adelphon. It's definitely adjectival. Okay, good. So so what you're seeing is your brother. This is the first important point. And this is, of course, why why I want to understand that, right? Because when you have that relationship, when you've got a noun and an adjective, it's clear who's the boss, right? The noun is the boss, right? The adjective is just telling you something about the noun, but it's the noun that the sentence is about. And so there are two characters here: the indefinite pronoun one. If one person theoretically, and this is an if theoretical subjunctive clause, right? So if one should see, there's our main verb of this clause, if one should see his brother. Oh, what about his brother? Which brother? Oh, the brother sinning a sin not unto death. That one. Okay, so sinning a sin, hamartananta hamartian, once again with the repeated words, like to vanquish someone with vanquishment, or to the asks that we ask just in the previous sentence. So John is to to use the metaphor I've used before, jumping up and down on the word hamartia here, right? Uses it twice in a row, right? If anyone should see the brother of him, the brother who happens to be at that time sinning a sin may pros thanaton, not towards death. A sin not in the direction of death. So you can dash your foot pros a stone. You can put an axe pros the root of a tree. You can head out pros Jerusalem. Or there can be a sin which is pros death. Now, obviously, there's a certain metaphor. It's a metaphor, as presumably the sin is not actually traveling in literal space, right? No, this is sin moving towards death. Oh, you mean the one that's because of the may, right? Yeah, Scott, I don't like the negation here. I'm yeah, a sin not headed towards death. And so Scott asks very sensibly, is it moving in the opposite direction from death, or is it sitting still? Is it a dormant sin, not moving? Um, is it going in a different direction? Uh, it certainly means, Scott, in this case, I think that it's not going in that direction. And I want to be careful because, of course, the translations suggest leading to death, right? That's an editorial interpretation, leading to. See, that shows that they're seeing the motion in pros, but they are Yes, they're implying the cause and effect here. Yes. They're suggesting that the movement, that it is not the sin itself which is moving towards death, but that the sin moves you towards death. And I don't say that's an unreasonable um an unreasonable interpretation. I'm just saying it's not like what's actually there. There's no leading unto here. There's no word for leading. Remember when we had earlier in the epistle, like the leading astray? Um, what was that word? What was that verb when you lead yourself astray? Um, oh, it was like plan oh planeo, maybe. Was that it? Um, anyway, we've had that metaphor actually used, like to be giving somebody bad guidance or leading them astray. So it's a concept that was here, but he's not using that verb here. That's not what he's actually saying here. He may be pointing to that, but it's not what he's actually saying. Um, okay. A sin, planeo. Yes. Planao. Woohoo. I remembered correctly. Planeo. Um, yes. That was the word like about leading yourself astray. Um, okay. Good. Anyway, my point is that's there's nothing like that. It's just pros. It's just the pros. There's nothing else but pros. Pros connecting sin and death. Because pros thanaton is an adjective modifying hamartian. If one should see his brother, which brother? Adjective. Oh, the sinning brother. Sinning what? Sinning a sin. I assume that hamartian there is the object of hamartananta, sinning a sin or sinning sin. Because I want to come back here, Randall, to the point that you were just making. Is it a count or non-count sin? Because it kind of makes a big difference if you say sinning sin unto death or sinning a sin unto death. Are you actually catching your brother in a particular act? Is that the e-day that the should see that's going on here? Or is it broader? Sinning sin. We'll see if we get any more data on that as we move forward, but let's not at least make the assumption that I am a little bit skeptical. Knowing as little as I know about Greek articles, I do know that they're quite fond of them. And so I have a hesitation about interposing an article in English that they didn't do in the Greek. I'm sure there's good justification for it. It just makes me a little uneasy because, again, I mean, heck, half the time they're using definite articles, like articles that we're skipping in English, right? Because we don't do them. Um, so yeah. Anyway, let's just, yeah, as you say, Susan, we'll put a pin in that and come back to that question. Um, if one should see his brother, which brother? The brother sinning a sin. What kind of sin is your brother sinning when you see him? Answer the prosthanaton. Well, the me prosthanaton. The not in the direction of death. That's the sinning question. The not in the direction of death. So again, uh, is it going to lead the brother into death? It may well, but what John is actually saying, he's describing the sin. He's not describing the brother here. We're seeing the brother, but he's describing the sin. The prosthanaton sin, or the me prosthanaton sin in this case, the not towards death sin. Okay, but let's get to our independent clause. This has all been preamble. What does in fact, what should one in fact do in the indicative mood if one should see his brother sinning a sin not towards death? Ita say this our itemata our what's the lemma there? Itema, our itema verb again, which we just got twice in the previous sentence. So we're still talking about asking. Note how important that is. He's not changed the subject. He's not like, I give you a brief aside to talk about different subcategories of sin, right? No, he was just talking about asking. If we know that he hears us, what we ask, we have seen that we have the asks that we asked from him. So he uses the word 3 times in the previous sentence. And then in the next sentence, he says about something you shall ask for. So it sounds like he's talking about the same thing, right? He's still on the same subject. Speaking of asking for things, here's the thing you should ask for. He shall ask, ooh, it's a future verb. Future indicative. We rarely see that. I was like, what does FIA mean? That's unusual. Okay. He will ask, and I'm so just hang on a second. Again, note the significance of this. Remember, one of the things which led to what felt like a breakthrough last time was paying attention to the tenses about the asking in the previous sentence. Whatever we might ask, we have seen perfect, that we have present tense, the requests that we have asked in the past from him. So he has just been, when he talks about our confidence in receiving what we ask for, he's talking about what we have asked for in the past. And remember, I was saying it makes a really big deal to me. It seems to even take it out of the category of promising for what we will ask, that we'll get anything we ask in the future. Because he's not talking about what we ask in the future. And yes, Scott, I agree. These tenses really do clarify the intent of John's meaning. Okay. So this is John. In the previous sentence was John talking about the things that we have in the past asked for. And we have seen that we have in the present the things that we have asked for. But now he's talking about the future. And he's not talking about whatever we want. What we're going to ask in the future, he will ask and he will give with 2 different he's, which is fun. Aitese kai dose. Wow, that's confusing. And he doesn't throw us any kind of pronoun at all. I mean, the him, but that's the object. Wow. Um, oh, that's interesting. Randall says it's worth noting that commandments, like thou shalt and thou shalt not, like the 10 commandments in the Septuagint, are in the future tense in Greek. Right. So when doing that kind of an imperative, right? This is what's gonna happen. It's couched because it's saying like I'm gonna confidently describe the future of your actions, right? That's what thou shalt or thou shalt not boils down to. Yeah, right. He will ask and he will give him life. Wow. 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 the traditional translation here. Notice how, look at this, look at this, look at this. He shall ask if anyone sees his brother committing a sin not leading to death, he shall ask, and God will for him give life. So the NASB has added not just a pronoun, but a noun, has put in the word God to clarify, because it's insisting that the person seeing, our theoretical seeing person, is doing the asking, and God is doing the giving. And I can understand why they would say that. Like, I can understand why they would insert that, because if you just translate it, you're never going to get that ever. If you just translate what it says, he shall ask and he will give him life. It is not in any way clear that it means the seeing one shall ask and God shall give. In fact, it's and yes, Susan, there are of course three different he's. There's the seer, there's God, and there's the brother, right? But the brother, that's the one that's clear because of its position, right? I mean, it's in the dative, it's an indirect object here. Give life to him. So that's pretty clear that that's the brother. That one seems obvious. Probably. That one at least seems very likely. But I mean, again, you just look at these verbs. Aitesai, kai dosai. Forget the English translations. When we just look at those two verbs, there is no reason to think that they have two different subjects. Any other time, John uses two verbs like that, same tense, same person, just separated by kai, we would automatically assume that this is a compound verb with the same subject. He will ask and give. Right? Again, I'm not necessarily arguing. I'm not necessarily trying to say that I think the translation's wrong. And I totally understand that there are some other pointers here. I'm just saying that's weird. And we have to realize that if we insist on that interpretation, which we may have very good reasons to make such an insistence, we are insisting on it in the teeth of John's syntax. And that always makes me real cautious. I want to do that with great caution and trepidation. Because what's that word that he used, Randall? Yes. Randall says, normally I would expect ikanos or the like when the subject changes. Yes, because he does mark it usually. I mean, this issue has come up many times in this epistle. When he's going back and he's not using nouns again. And it's like, which one is doing which thing? Who's abiding in whom at this point, right? And all that stuff. And he does, that has been his normal technique, that one. And that one will give him the one I was talking about before. That's usually what he's done in this kind of an instance. Remember, we're not trying to translate. We're trying to understand. We're trying to understand John's words. And I am very interested in the question. I'm not just trying to figure out what is John trying to say. I am very interested in the question, why has John chose to say it this way? I would posit, I think that the minimum claim that we can make safely about that little compound word verb structure is that this is less clear than it could be. John has not clarified. He has left this vague. He's forced you, if you're going to get it, you have to stop and think about it. He's not helping here. He is not doing the work, any work for us to separate those two things. Again, I'm not saying they shouldn't be separated or that John doesn't want us to separate them. I'm just saying he's not doing it. Notice how the interlinear translators are really anxious about this too. Notice these commas. Remember, the commas are totally editorial. There's no textual justification for the commas. And they have set this off. The commas they have inserted here actually make no sense at all in English. Like if I were grading a paper and somebody were putting commas this way in English, I would be like, what are you doing? He shall ask, comma, and he will give him life, comma, to those sinning. No, you can't separate that with a comma. I think that is to say, I think that the interlinear people who are trying to give it to us without interpretation are doing interpret because they themselves are anxious because they see like, man, that's confusing. Because holy cow, aitese kai dose sounds exactly like it's the same person doing both things. Stephen, no, there should not be neither one of these. You can put a comma after, in English, you could put a comma after the first one. If anyone should see his brother sinning a sin not unto death, comma, then you start as a separator to separate the subordinate clause that came at the beginning from the independent clause that then continues. So this first comma in English, if we're doing English, this first comma would make sense. This second comma and third comma, totally nonsensical in English. You'd have nothing there. There would be no punctuation in English. But they're adding in all this punctuation because they don't want to they don't want to do what they did in the NASB, which just inserted the word God to clarify. Right. So that our poor interlinear folks, they're like, okay, we can't go that far. But I feel like we got to do something. Right. Um, I believe that I agree, Susan, that it would be logically hard to get this wrong once you go through it. But it's easy to get it wrong when you hear it. Um, it's easy to get this wrong when you hear it. And that's my question. Why? John could have said this in many clearer ways. And this is not just like the kind of clarity that's about like presenting your argument in a clear way. This is just clear grammar. I mean, you don't need pronouns in Greek like we need them in English. But even in the Greek, I'm like, throw us a pronoun here. Right? I mean, that's what Randall was saying. Like there is a pronoun that he generally does throw us when he does this sort of thing. The ikenos, that one. I feel like every other time John has done this, he has said, he shall ask, and ikenos, that one will give him life. Um, Yeah, again, there's no punctuation in the manuscript. So again, I'm pointing to the commas in the interlinear on my interlinear here, only because they are evidence of the anxiety of the interlinear editors. Like you can see, everyone who is dealing with this text is worried about it and trying to help. And that's my point. John has written this in such a way that we need help. And I agree, Susan, that if you stop and think it through, it's pretty clear. Who else can give life? It's got to be God. God has to be the one giving life. And would God be asking here? Well, we've just been talking about us asking. So it's probably the one who's in this position of us. So the one seeing the brother who's doing the asking. So I agree. Once you really sit down with this sentence, is the meaning clear? Yes. So why did he make it hard? Well, let me come back to that. I think there are answers to that question, but let me come back to that. Aitese kai dose. He shall ask, and he will give zoen to him. Life, zoe. This is the same as our zoe, our life, our agish life, our zoen, ionion, which he separates around the thing, whatever. But anyway, there it is. Zoen, ionion, the life of the age, presumably the same life that we're talking about. We're talking about God giving the life of the age, which is what we've been talking about this entire paragraph. So we've not changed the subject at all. So before we even get back to the prosthanaton element of this sentence, notice a correction perhaps that we might want to make on our understanding of the previous sentence. And if we know that he hears us, and if we ask that thing, we know that we have seen the asks that we have asked in the past from him. But remember last time when we were talking about this, I was saying it sounds like the asks are about our eternal life, like about people's anxiety about their salvation, right? Do I have the life of the age? He's like, I'm writing these things so you know that you have the life of the age. We know that we have the asks that we have asked for them. And so the implication seems to be that what are the ask? What is the ask that we're asking? What are we talking about here? We're talking about asking for life, for the life of the age. But verse 16 implies, what are we asking in verse 16? Life of the age again, but not for us. And maybe that's what it's possibly this is expanding upon it, that we were thinking about asking for our own life in verse 15. And now in verse 16, we're asking for somebody else's life. But it's also possible that it was our brothers' lives that we were talking about in the first place. So we might need to recalibrate our understanding of verse 15 and not just assume that the ask in question was about our own life. Um, it may be, but it may also be more because here we're talking about being given life, not our life, but life for others, life for our brothers. Okay, anyway, so give life to him, auto, dative, indirect object, give life to him. To those, shift to the plural, from the singular to the plural. The him here is referring back to Adelphon, singular, the brother. It will give him, that is the brother of him, life. And then he expands it. Okay, I apologize to the editors. I would in English put a comma here. But again, it's not in the Greek, so it doesn't matter. Um, to those sinning not unto death. So this is one of those moves where he is like saying the same thing again, right? He's doing it a positive thing. He will give him life to those sinning not unto death. Like those are the ones to whom God will give life. To those tois, tois, dative. Oh, it's tois. It sounds weird, unfamiliar because it's in the dative and that's unusual. What's the form of this that I'm more used to? Oh, it's the definite article. It's just ho. Okay. Right. Gotcha. Okay. Um, right. So toys, this is just the sinning not unto death one. The sinning not unto death ones. He will give life to him. You know, to the not sinning towards death ones. Okay. So there is an expansion from the theoretical singular of the theoretical brother in the if clause at the beginning to a broader application. The broader application, therefore, implying that God will give life to those sinning not unto death when one who sees them sinning in that fashion will ask. Okay. Notice I find it weird that John is starting with the negative. Like, what I mean is, I don't know, maybe it's this negative. It's almost like Scott, it reminds me of the questions you were asking about pros, about me pros, not towards, right? Does that mean standing still or does that mean moving in a different direction, right? Um, in a similar way, I want to ask, okay, John, so when you see your brother sinning, but sinning in such a way that is not in the direction of death, then you should ask, what what do you do when your brother isn't sinning? Or are you implying that your brothers are going to be sinning all the time and the only question is what is going to be the direction of their sin, right? Um, and you see the comparison I'm making, Scott. I feel unclear about it in exactly the same way that you were feeling unclear about what me pros means. John obviously cares about the sinning a sin not towards death thing. And I mean, because he repeats it twice, right? He not only says, if anyone should see his brother sinning sin not towards death, but then he repeats it at the end. He will ask, and he will give him life, will give life to him, to those sinning not unto death, right? Like he, not towards death. He repeats it again as if to emphasize it, right? As if that's a real restriction. Because he's going to go on. Estin hamartia prostanaton. Sin towards death is. That's a thing. Sin towards death is. Ou peri aikenes, there's his little pointer pronoun. Not about that do I say that he should implore, that he might implore. This is subjunctive. It is not concerning that. Not concerning that do I say that he should ask. Randall says the word order is important here, I think. I think so too. A sin towards death is. Not concerning that, that is presumably the sin towards death. Do I say that he should ask? So he is very much, he, John, is very much, I should try to be clear in my own subjects and pronouns. John does in fact seem to be very interested in the distinction between the sin towards death and the sin not towards death. One can't help but notice, however, that for all that he is clearly interested in that distinction, he appears to be not at all interested in explaining or defining the difference between these two things, right? He's going to go on and say more. Spoiler, it's not going to give it away. But we let's go back and look at a thing. Back in paragraph 10. Yes, the Cain paragraph. Remember this? Speaking of movement prepositions. For what reason did Cain slaughter his brother? Because his own deeds were evil and his brothers were righteous. Do not be surprised, brothers and sisters, if the world hates you. So 3:14. We know that we have passed out of death into life because we love the brothers and sisters. The one who does not love abides in death. Each of the hating his brother or sister ones is a person killer. And you know that no person killer has the life of the age abiding in him. You can see why I think this passage is relevant, right? All of our elements are there. Life of the age versus death. We've got movement from one to the other, right? Moving, passing out, that movement verb. That same verb that's used when you go out of one city and go to another city. Right? We were comparing it at the time to like moving out, like changing your address, right? So you're moving out of death and into life, or you can abide in death. And eternal life will come abide in you. If apparently you're not a person killer. Notice that here, he does make a clear correlation. Who abides in death? The one who does not, the not loving one, abides in death. So the difference between death and life, like which address you end up in, do you stay in death? Do you abide there? Or do you move out of death and go towards life? By the way, it's this sentence, if we go back for a second, because I'm pretty sure that's ice, isn't it? EIS. Oh, missed it. Metebekamen, there's our verb. We have passed ektutheu, out of death, ice, tenzoin. That's what I thought I remembered. Yes, that's why I thought ice was going to be our pronoun, because I was remembering this passage. From death into life. Yes. Okay. We're not going pros life. We're going ice, tenzoin, into life. Didn't you say, Randall, that ice tends to be about the goal and pros about the direction? Right? Like into like as in like that's more of a coming home thing, right? Like you've arrived in life. You're not just headed in this direction. You've arrived out of death and you're putting down roots in life. Right. Whereas the sin of paragraph 18 is just sin that is pointed at death. It's not settled down there yet. Exactly right. Here he's talking about arrival. There he's just talking about direction and movement. Right. Okay. And notice the tense here. We know that we have passed. Perfect tense. It's a thing that's complete. It's an action that's complete. And the question is, how do we know? How have we seen that we have passed? Oidamen? How have we seen that we have passed? That we're done moving out of death and into life? Well, Hoti, in that we love our brothers. It's the love for the brothers that we can see and that enables us to have seen, to know, to have observed, to comprehend, to have experienced that we in fact have departed from death and moved into life. And the not loving one abides in death. Everybody who hates his brother, the opposite of those who love their brothers, everyone hates his brother is a person killer. And you know that any person killer does not have Eke Zoin Ionian. That's precisely, remember what he wrote to us to write to us that we may know that we Eke Zoin Ionian in our paragraph 18. It does not have the life of the age abiding in him. Okay. So remember the person killing thing. So love, hate, and person killing. Those are the terms that he introduced back here in paragraph 10 that and remember that paragraph 10 comes right after paragraph 9, which was the sin paragraph. So he's just been talking about hamartia and anomia and all that stuff in the previous paragraph. And now in this paragraph, he's talking about our seeing, our knowing, our experiencing that we have passed from death to life, from death into life. So I guess Yes, the have passed, the perfect tense of metabekamen is perfectly appropriate, Randall, as you say, because we've arrived. It's happened, right? That's why we've got ice to Zoan. And so I'm going to interpret his use of pros instead of ice as um optimistic, maybe? That is, it's because if you see your brother sinning sin that is ice, that is ice Thanaton, well, it's arrived in death. That's a pretty big deal, right? He's only talking about sin which is pointed in the direction of death. Now, that doesn't mean it's not serious. It doesn't mean it's not imminent, even the death part. Just as remember John the Baptist using that same pronoun describing the axe and the tree, right? Um, but still, it's still only pointing to the direction. Um, right. He's talking about a sin that doesn't point towards death. All right, hang on a second. There's still so much to we're absolutely coming back to this next time. There's a whole bunch to still figure out, and we'll move on to the next sentence next time also. But let me finish up here. Um, this idea of death is where we were. We were in death, and we left it, and we passed out of death and into life because we love the brothers. The Zoe, the Zoe Ionion, the agish life, which abides in us now. That's what we moved into. Whereas the not loving one abides in death. Okay. Um, all right. Okay. So back to paragraph 18. So when he talks about a sin pointing to death, a sin towards death, and a sin not towards death, he is introducing a distinction that is different from the one he was making in paragraph 10. In paragraph 10, it was just love or hate, life or death, right? You either had in the perfect tense moved out of death and into life and arrived at life, or you were abiding in death. Those were the two options. Now he's talking about seeing your brother on a on a a deathward path, right? Or not. If I had to guess, so like when he says there is a sin towards death, if I had to say, okay, what's he talking about? Like, what is he alluding to? What is the sin towards death? The evidence of the epistle says hating your brother, person killing, right? I mean, you said that no person killer has the life of the age abiding in him. And everyone who hates his brother is a person killer. That's the only thing from within the epistle that we have any context for here. But the problem is that context does not help us understand the hamartian me pros thanaton, not towards death. Because again, all we had before was just life and death. Now we have this intermediary state of something which is sin, but which is sin not in the direction of death. Okay. Um, let's let's pause here because I think we need the next sentence because we're not done talking about this yet. I mean, I think we're not going to be done talking about this until we finish verse 18. Um, last thing before we go, there's much more to figure out here. The last thing before we go, I want to make sure not to lose sight of the fact that, again, he's not changed the subject. We know that we know that we have seen the asks that we have asked from him, of him. We know that we have them that we asked for. But what will we ask for? We will ask for him to give life to our brothers, apparently on the condition that they're not sinning sins towards death. Because he says a sin towards death is ou peri aikenes. Not concerning that one. I say? I say he should ask. The subject is the topic, that is to say, of the paragraph, is having the life of the age. And we were talking about asking God for that thing, which is, I think, the life of the age, and being confident that we have what we ask for. And now to that, he introduces a hypothetical and introduces a distinction. In the future, you're going to ask for that same thing, the life of the age, for others. And there are going to be two categories of those others. There's going to be those sinning prosthenaton and those sinning me prosthenaton. The me prosthenaton ones, go ahead, ask, and God will give the Zoe, the life. The prosthenaton ones, no good. One last observation. Notice how he comes back to the same word, because erotese is the same. Is that the same word? Ask? No, it's a different word. I mean, in English, it's a synonym. In Greek, it may be a synonym too, but it's not the same word. It's not the aitese verb. Okay, come back to that next time. What is the distinction? Why has he shifted verbs? When we know that John is emphatically not shy about repeating words, having just repeated that word 4 times in the last 2 sentences, right? Why did he not go for 5? Why did he shift words here? Um, so that's one question I have that we'll talk about next time. But the other thing, the asking, the asking is about the brother. He will ask and he will give life to him, to the brother. And then he says, I don't say you should ask about that. Um, I don't say you should ask about that. But he wasn't asking about the sin. He was asking about the brother. Notice there's no brother at all in that second sentence. There is a sin unto death. Ooh, Perry, I could, not concerning that thing, do I say he should ask. But we weren't asking about sins. We're asking about brothers. Certain brothers, the ones sinning not towards death. But we weren't asking about sins. The sins were a thing about the brother. And now he talks about our not imploring. Maybe that's connected with his shift of verb from ask. And Susan, yes, I don't want to lose your question. If he's not headed towards death, why does he need to be given life? Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. It's a sin, technically, that's not moving towards death. Again, I want to resist, although I think it's a perfectly sensible interpretation. I want John to convince me that he's talking about leading people towards death. Like the sin leading to death thing. Remember, like I said, he says, might he be implying that? Yes, but he's not saying it. Hamartia pros thanaton. That's his phrase. Sin towards death. Or sin not towards death. And he hasn't said here, he does imply earlier on that actions of people lead them or keep them in death, right? Not loving your brother, hating your brother, aka person killing. If you're doing that, you're abiding in death. But notice how that also suggests he's changing his metaphor here. Because you didn't have to go pros death before, you're already in it. The question was just whether you were going to stay there or not. Whether you were, I mean, you were already living in death. You were there. You weren't moving towards it. You were there. The question is whether you were going to get to move out. Which seems perfectly in keeping with the metaphor of giving life, right? To say we've passed out of death and into life, and to say God has given us life. Those seem to be two different ways of metaphorically constructing the same idea, right? So why are we talking about pros death? There was no issue of pros death in paragraph 10 because you were there already. Yep. Susan and I have a lot of questions too. All right. Well, um, so we didn't we didn't finish. But we're moving pros an understanding, I think, uh, of this, of these sentences. Let's see how we can do next time. Um, as I say, I don't think we can really expect to fully understand this until we finish um, the paragraph. Um, but so next time we will move on to verse 17, and then we'll keep trying to put this together. But I promise you, I am not going to leave paragraph 18 until I feel much clearer in my mind about what on earth is going on here. Um, all right. Thank you. Yes. Um, I hope that you have enjoyed that you have with me moved at least a little bit Pross understanding of this passage. Um, but though we might, so even if we haven't arrived there, we may be oriented in the proper direction. We'll see. Maybe next time we'll discover that we were May Pross understanding, but who knows? All right. Thank you, everybody. I will see you guys next time. Bye now.